Those who seek to blame others are themselves the problem, and we will have zero patience or tolerance of that.
Petition that's
exactly.
currently
Your approval
online
ratings have dropped.
1.9 people who want the election to go again.
It's now
Is
over
it 2 million now?
It's now just over 2 million.
2/3 of UK businesses may raise prices due to tax hikes, according to a retail consortium report. This shocking statistic reveals the real-world impact of recent political decisions. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. As the cost of living crisis deepens, we're left wondering, who's really looking out for the average citizen? The answer might surprise you. Remember when Labour promised economic stability? Well, it seems those promises have fallen flat, leaving businesses across the UK struggling to keep their heads above water. As we dig deeper into Starmer's economic blunders, a disturbing pattern emerges, one that raises serious questions about Labour's ability to manage the nation's finances.
The Prime Minister knowingly appointed a convicted fraudster to be his Transport Secretary. What was he thinking?
I'm convinced that if we can show that politics can change Britain for the better, then we can face the future with confidence.
Let's start with the cold, hard facts. The British Retail Consortium recently released a report that sent shockwaves through the business community. According to their findings, UK businesses are facing unprecedented price hikes across the board. We're not talking about minor increases here. These are the kind of eye-watering jumps that keep small business owners up at night. But here's where it gets really interesting. While Starmer has been shouting from the rooftops about fiscal responsibility, the reality on the ground tells a very different story. Take, for example, Labour's past economic policies. When we examine their track record, we see a history of overspending and mismanagement that would make even the most reckless spender blush. Remember the last time Labour was in power? They left the country with a deficit that took years to recover from. And now, Starmer wants us to believe he's learned from those mistakes. The numbers simply don't add up. Let's compare some of Starmer's public statements on the economy with the actual outcomes we're seeing. He's promised to build a strong economy and support businesses, but under his leadership, we're seeing rising costs and struggling enterprises. It's a classic case of saying one thing and doing another.
He has relaunched yet again. Many new targets, 6 milestones, 5 missions, but why was cutting immigration not a priority?
Not that. I wake up every morning thinking I've got a mandate to change the country. I've got a mandate to improve living standards. I've got a mandate to improve the health service.
But the real kicker? The damning statistics that expose Labour's economic failures. Independent analyses have shown that Labour's proposed policies would lead to an increase in government debt of over $200 billion. That's not just a miscalculation. It's a financial time bomb waiting to explode. And let's not forget about inflation. While Starmer talks a big game about controlling prices, the reality is that under Labour's watch, we could see inflation skyrocket to levels not seen in decades. This isn't speculation. It's based on expert economic projections that paint a grim picture of what a Labour-led economy would look like. As we uncover more of Starmer's missteps, it becomes increasingly clear that his economic competence is seriously in question. How can we trust someone to lead the country who can't even get their basic math right? It's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. These miscalculations have real-world consequences for hard-working families across the UK. Just when Starmer thought he had the upper hand in the economic debate, the tables turned dramatically during a recent Prime Minister's questions.
This petition will result in nothing. They've got a huge majority of over 400. Doesn't force them to an election, but does get them a debate.
No income tax, no national insurance, no VAT.
Means that this budget raises taxes by £40 billion.
The Labour leader's attempts to challenge the government on economic issues backfired spectacularly, leaving him scrambling to maintain his carefully crafted image of competence. As Starmer launched into his critique of the government's economic policies, focusing on tax hikes and their impact on businesses, he seemed confident in his position. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was ready with a counterattack that left Labour reeling. Sunak's response was sharp and unexpected, highlighting the government's commitment to fiscal responsibility. "We took the right and difficult decisions at the budget," Sunak declared, emphasizing their ironclad commitment to our fiscal rules. The effectiveness of the Prime Minister's rebuttal strategy became apparent as he skillfully turned the tables on Starmer. Instead of merely defending his own policies, Sunak went on the offensive, targeting Labour's past economic failures. In a moment that caught many off guard, Sunak revealed, "I got a letter this week from a Tory voter in a Labour seat. It was actually crashing the economy that damaged her reputation." This clever move not only deflected criticism, but also reminded the public of Labour's questionable economic record. Sunak's aggressive defence didn't stop there.
She talks about my record. For 5 years, I was the chief prosecutor, prosecuting people who went to prison, many of whom were then deported. Is obvious, but border security is equally obvious in my view, and that's why I've said we are committed to bringing down immigration.
He continued to hammer home his point, asserting, "Their record, they flatlined the economy, worst cost of living crisis in living history." These pointed remarks aimed to undermine Starmer's credibility on economic matters, and it worked. The Labour leader found himself on the back foot, struggling to counter these accusations effectively. As the exchange heated up, Starmer's arguments began to crumble under the weight of Sunak's counterattacks. The Prime Minister's claim that Labour had left a £22 billion black hole left Starmer floundering for a response. It became increasingly clear that Labour's leader was ill-prepared for such a forceful defence from the government benches. The public reaction to this shift in political dynamics was palpable.
I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works. There would be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place.
You want us, the public, to trust you, to like you, to think he's the man for the job, he's doing what he needs to do. Your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage's right now.
Many commentators noted that Starmer's arguments appeared weak and unconvincing when faced with Sunak's assertive rebuttals. Questions about Starmer's leadership effectiveness in the face of direct challenges began to surface, further eroding his carefully constructed image of competence. This PMQ session marked a significant moment in British politics. Starmer's carefully crafted image of economic competence began to crumble under the pressure of Sunak's aggressive defence and pointed criticisms of Labour's past governance. The Prime Minister, often seen as the underdog in these exchanges, emerged as an unexpected force, catching Labour off guard and seizing control of the narrative. The recent polls paint a concerning picture for political leaders across the spectrum, with 67% of voters feeling disconnected from their representatives. It's clear that the public's patience is wearing thin.
She campaigned to remove the cap on migrant worker visas, and now she pretends she's furious about the open borders policy of the last government. I will defend our decisions in the budget all day long. I will defend facing up to the harsh light of fiscal reality.
This isn't just about Starmer or Sunak anymore. It's a wake-up call for the entire political establishment. The demand for accountability is reaching a fever pitch, and it's not hard to see why. Recent controversies have left a bitter taste in voters' mouths. and they're no longer willing to accept hollow promises or slick PR campaigns. This shift in the political landscape could spell trouble for Labour and the Conservatives alike.
Is that because you fear failure?
No, Beth. The way we've constructed it is that there are foundational things that a government must do.
Frankly, no, seriously, I think we're let down by all sides of the parties.
I think they've got the right intentions, but they're struggling to get their message across, I think, is the problem.
As we approach future elections, both parties will need to do some serious soul-searching. The public is demanding more than just sound bites and catchy slogans. They want real solutions, transparency, and leaders who can actually deliver on their promises. The question is, are any of our current crop of politicians up to the task?